already know him. It's Federico Bellentani. He has been with us already in like two sessions ago, I think. Sorry, I'm just okay. In any case, he works. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are in Torino.
Yes.
He's a postdoc researcher in Torino, and he has been working with Semiotics of Space for a long time now, and he's vice president of the International Association of the Semiotics of Space and Time, which, yeah, it used to be run by Professor Pellegrino, who is a very important figure for this series, because, yeah, this is a sort of homage to him. And it's great to have Federico here. I actually met Federico through Pellegrino in Buenos Aires. So that's very nice to have him here now. And yeah, Federico,
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Israel, for the invitation. Thank you for the previous presenter, to ID and to Victoria. Our presentation somehow overlap and connect to each other. Thank you also for this homage to Professor Pier Pellegrino, through which we managed to meet. So this community, you know, global community that I see here today, a lot of people and friends from Tartu, from Olomouc, from all over Europe and the world. Hello. And yeah, so until the very last moment, Professor Pier Pellegrino managed to connect different communities, research community, JH bands, and so on and so forth. So let's dedicate this presentation to him. This presentation that, again, you will see several monuments as well, and possibly coming back to do you see my presentation? Yeah, is it all good now? You see? Yeah,
yes.
Perfect. No, so it goes right. Perfect, great.
Yes.
So we will get back to that kind of topic, which are the contested or controversial monument, and try to find together some solution which rely on digital technology as well. And I will try to go quite fast on the theoretical and methodological part, designing the semiotic and geographical approach, since it's, I mean, it's already late, and maybe we can have some further discussion later on this topic. I think that is pretty clear already from also the what Victoria presented before, these quite banal statements that monuments have commemorative as well as political function. Those are four of the main function in terms of connecting to the topic of before, identity and memory. The function of monuments, at first, they define a uniform national memory, educating citizens toward what to remember and what not to remember of the past. They define then a uniform national identity, shaping some basic values and sentiment of national collectiveness. While doing so, they inculcate particular conception of the past, the present, future. This heterogeneous view of the historical narratives, where elements of the past are highlighted in order to give certain kind of future perspective by design of the space in general and monuments and memorial in particular. While doing so, they set political agendas, legitimizing and reproducing the political power of those who erect those monuments. In particular, my research focused on let's say, public art and public monuments and memorial that 99% of the time are built and directed by nation state, and that's also related to the national politics of memory and identity. In this respect, monuments and memorial create a sort of discourse of the past. And if there is a discourse, then there are some authors continuing this narrative metaphor that create this discourse for specific purposes and to convey specific narratives. In this respect, when I focus on national elites, they are really aware of the power of monuments, and they use them to educate citizens toward the kind of ideal they want them to strive toward. But if there is a discourse, there are authors, there are also the eaters, the citizens, us, that interpret in a myriad of different way and use it in a myriad of different way, this discourse. Each of us having a particular way of frame social reality based on our cultural traits, our political views, our social economic interests, as well as contingent needs. So there is a sort of paradox in monuments. While for authors, they are meant to be stable over time in their physical form, in their very evident material aspects. So they somehow try to fix in the urban space, in stone or other materials, certain kind of meaning that they, through a process of monument design and an institutional process of building and erecting and constructing a monument, they think that what they want to represent through it will be interpreted as they planned, and it will be stable over time somehow. Or at least they have this illusion, and they're absolutely aware of this illusion. Of course, this doesn't work, and we know that the meaning of monuments are very dynamic. They reflect changes of culture, social relation, concepts of nation, and views of the past, because individuals interpret and use monuments in ways that elites might have never envisioned. So there are different kinds of interpretation and uses of monuments since day one of their establishment. So monuments become contested, meaning that they represent outdated cultural values, reflect the ideology of a bigger regime, and for this reason, they become contested for a large, more or less large number of society, and their permanence in public space has become problematic. This is the case of Soviet or socialist monument in countries in Eastern and Central Europe. This is the case of Confederate monuments in the US and other statues and monuments that represent ideals related to slavery and racism. This is the example of fascist architecture still standing in Italy that has been somehow desemiotized from and this just functional architecture, not perceived necessarily as fascist, but still standing in Italian cities, and so on and so forth. This is not to put everything in a random pool, but to say that those are a hot topic that actually impacts a lot on our society and culture, and there is a lot of debate around it, and different communities differently react to these monuments and memorials, using them also as a space where to reconquer a certain kind of indeed space and time for their own values by reinventing them and reusing them. So just to say, this is just a quotation that I like, this metaphor of the horizon of meaning that actually characterize every monuments and memorial according to what I was saying before. So I think that, as Victoria already showed, the semiotic and counter-geographic approach to monuments can be really useful to explore the meaning making and the interpretation of monuments in the given cultural context beyond what was already much studied, which is the aesthetic, the commemorative, and celebrative dimension. Very simply, you know, we need a certain kind of attention toward cultural geography in order to define the kind of cultural spaces that stem from monuments and memorial, including, of course, all the multiple interpretation and meanings that through the spatial history of monuments and memorial has attracted. And that's why also we need semiotics in order to have a focus on the multiple meaning and interpretation. Until the fact that, as we say, the multiple meaning and interpretation of monuments, we do have a certain kind of process in culture and society, which is what I call the cultural invention of the contested meanings of monuments and memorial. Those are institutional. During my fieldwork in Estonia, I did identified 9 different institutional practices to reinvent monuments and memorials, to not doing it, so to leave the monument as it stands till the most to destroying the monument, so completely, not only remove, but completely destroy the monument and lose its pieces around the space. Of course, those are only analytical categories, and there can be many different gray areas between those points, and obviously one monument can have encompass one or more than these practices. Less researched, but incredibly important, and more important as we see more and more often in the news. Monuments and memorial are used by different social community as a way to display their own meanings and their own view on historical events, and also as a space for their resistant or mainly or more creative and playful practices. This is the kind of from the classical image, you know, of the spontaneous excision during the regime change, as we see, for example, from the beginning of the 1990s in Eastern and Central Europe, to the spontaneous excision due to political protests, as, for example, we see many examples during the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement after the killing of George Floyd in 2020, or desecrating with paint or covering the unwanted monuments in the public space. At the same time, as I said, there are also more creative and playful practices. The space of monument, often with these large spaces that are not give the possibility to do certain kind of more sport activities like BMX or biking and so on, and so skating. So in a certain way reinventing the space of monument in a different way from the original meanings. There's also the projecting, like the projection of Afro-American heroes on the contested pedestal of Confederate monuments in the US during the protests following the killing of George Floyd. The graffiti and public art, in order to completely change the meaning of, for example, in the image we see a Soviet memorial in Sofia, which was repainted with the popular culture characters such as Superman, Santa Claus, Captain America, and so on and so forth, or playing and mocking the stage and the represented character and action in the stage itself. So more creative and playful practices around the monuments and memorial. And let's get now to the actual topic of today. And what about the digital? Because I guess that probably due to the very evident materiality, due also to the institutional spaces that are often highly secured and controlled, digital practices, both at institutional level and at the bottom-up level, are less used to reinvent the meaning of monuments. Digitalization of cultural heritage actually is not a new thing. There are a plethora of different European projects and research which look at the institutional and individual digitalization of cultural heritage. And there are also some semioticians that has started to look at digital solution for the digitalization of cultural heritage and memory. So in this respect, this is not new, and there are many international projects that say that have very different objectives, methods, and practices that use different technologies, data, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth, that place themselves at the intersection of computing, digital technology, and humanities. Their main objective, despite their being very different among each other, is mainly three: digital preservation in order to make valuable cultural assets available for future generation against all the natural or human-derived threats, easing the access of the cultural heritage sites and monuments and memorial as well, providing online access to cultural material for everybody, and to capture the imagination of digital native young generation. There's also individual practices. This is actually a sort of scanner of this particular kind of picture, which I don't know the name in English, like diapo or something like this, which is on the table of my grandfather, which is doing one of the main project of digitalization of his own pictures in order to make them available and more usable and to us and to his family and friends. And so these also work at the individual level. But I guess we're still, and I come to what I was saying before, on a sort of traditional approach on the application of digital technology to the preservation of cultural heritage and cultural heritage in general. We're sort of in the phase of transmuting physical artifacts into digital media. No doubt that there has been many initiatives for digitalization of cultural heritage artifacts. No doubt those projects have enhanced research and cross-sector operation between ICT, cultural heritage, and user, referring to the main objective that usually they gain themselves. But these projects remain rather theoretical, rather academic, and they often fail to foster citizen engagement and innovative use, and especially they not always consider, rarely consider, the controversial meaning of cultural heritage. And here we come exactly to the topic of today. So how can we somehow connect digital technology and the multiple meaning of cultural heritage in general, and monuments and memorial in particular, in order to provide a solution for the preservation of cultural heritage and for the problem, for the issue of controversial monuments and memorial. In this respect, I guess now I'm focusing on three specific area, which is digital, the connection, the embeddedness of digital and physical heritage, and monuments and memorial in particular, of digital native memorial practices, and on the, as said, digital solution for controversial monuments. In this respect, the embeddedness of digital and physical monuments memorial is quite rare, but for example, in Estonia, you have one of the greatest example where at the victim of communist memorial 2 kilometers outside the city center of Tallinn, where there is an example of a memorial where the digital and the landscape memorial that we see in the picture actually connect in a way that is unique in the world, because in this kind of corridor of memory where there are the names of the victims of the communists in Estonia, one can see the names that are already there, but through the physical memorial one can not only access those names and do some research, but also propose some entries. If you someone has a member of his family, his friends that was victims, then he can do an entry which is checked out by the Estonian Institute of Historical Memories, and if this is obviously true, then this name not only enter on the digital memorial, but also made it on the wall itself, so it become physical as such. There are also many digital and memorial practices already in, especially in memorial museums. For example, the 9/11 museums present this kind of wall of faces where one can access data of the victim of the 9/11 attack, to read the stories and so on and so forth. So this kind of connection between digital memory and the way the memory takes shape in space, in monuments, memorials, or museums. There are many examples, and now there is a need also to get into the research aspect of it in order to understand the different practices, meaning and interpretation that are around them. A little bit less researched and also a little bit less cases, for the reason that I was saying before, that are on the digital solution for controversial heritage. Some example has been found, as already said before, on the digital projection. We have also example of AR and VR, especially through apps on smartphones that made available, give people the opportunity to see some augmented or virtual reality around the monuments, memorials through the smartphone. And also this was an example. I don't know if you can hear the sound, but it's not really needed. This is a memorial in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum where new technology has been used to augment the content of the picture that is in this kind of art installation, in order to access data of the families that are represented, of the people that are represented. Digital photography, again, in this particular and, in my opinion, kind of devastating form, aesthetic form, which take shape of a real art object, where Sahar Shapira in 2017 did this Holocaust, where picture of the multiple more general way of use the Holocaust memorial in Berlin are attached to actual picture of the Holocaust, creating this friction that make the visitor, the user, to really think or rethink about the practices of these of their more general and more spontaneous practices around the memorial, and creating also some kind of debates, right? Because the memorial is in a big part of the city, and people pass through there. How can we somehow eliminate this kind of practices? But shall we? Because this is a way for the people to use it, and it's somehow allowed because we live in democracy, and so on and so forth. So created also certain kind of stimulating debate, until the more common digital signature that can be placed around the controversial monuments and memorial in order somehow to give a certain context. No, and here, you know, it comes a bit of what we were saying before with the question to Victoria, you know, what to do with controversial monuments, and you know, shall we place them in a more memorial park or in a museum? Definitely, you know, the digital signature has been used often, you know, as a way to partly deal from the institution. You know, we give a bit of context nearby through a digital screen, and you know, that is all. Of course, this does not reduce the conflict, which still exists and needs to be assessed, studied, and understood more thoroughly. I guess I don't really have time to go through the particular case of Estonia, just to say, you know, that we see already the, you know, digital embeddedness on this trajectory, which is expressed in the Mariam Memorial outside Tallinn, and I guess that due to you know, being Estonia, a country which invested a lot of, let's call it for the sake of simplicity, digital transformation, and it's highly digitalized, surely there can be a next step where, you know, there will be a digital solution for contested monuments and memorial. As I would like, you know, to give a just small takeaway for tonight, for us to think and to collect feedback through it, also for what Victoria before presented and so on and so forth. I guess that there is the need, you know, to research not only contested monuments memorial, not only institutional bottom-up and creative and platform practice to reinvent it, but also to see how these enter in the digital era, in the digital culture, and how this somehow you know, connect to our everyday life, that other aspect of our life become more and more digital, and also monuments and memorials are probably more slowly but surely becoming digital as well, as we see from the example that I try to show you today. So I call for this interdisciplinary approach to address the digitization of the cultural and material heritage in general, monuments and memorial in specific, that really looks at how people make sense of it, generate meaning, and engage with it through a myriad of different practices. So this connection between semiotics of the monuments, the cultural geographical spaces that stem out of them, but also with a kind of background on computing, on ECT and technology, in order at least to speak the language, in order to be active and actually proposed some actual solution. in order indeed to support the design of digital solutions that consider the multiple nature, the multiple meaning and interpretation that are around monuments and memorials. I hope to have given you some ideas on this, and with that, I thank you very much again for the invitation and for the attention.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot, Federico. Yeah, thank you very much. We already
Thanks to you.
So, Josh.
Let me just, sorry 1 second. So I'm sharing, stop share. It was quite easy. So yes, in 2022, I'm speaking about digital and I'm not able to unshare my screen in Zoom. That's happened. Sorry guys, here I am.
No worries, no worries.
It's just updated, that's why I'm partly excused because of that. No, sorry, Josh, I cut you off.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for the talk. I think it's a great, your talk's a great sum up for the three, actually. Your talk reminds me of why I got into semiotics in the first place, and perhaps, I actually used to be an architect designer, and what got me, in 2003, I actually entered the 9/11 Memorial Competition, and that eventually led me to semiotics. But I offer, and I can put it in the chat, this for, I don't know backwards for you guys. Oh, see, my blur is, I'll write it in the chat. But anyways, it's a book that of all the 5,200 entries to the 9/11 Memorial Competition, there were approximately 1/5 of them that this author of this book selected that were innovative. Most generally, and I think what's interesting, well, for me in particular, my entries also in this book, because I was interested in 2003 of how it is digital, both analog, digital technologies could help evolve memorials from their traditional way of all the way from just being propaganda to just sort of controlling the narrative, to being more helpful in going back to the first talk, Heidi's talk about conspiracy theories, that if her claim is true, which I suspect it may be, that over the last 200 years, conspiracy theories have only increased, and in large part maybe because of the acceleration of globalization and the information exchange, as an index to the tension, the increased tension of sort of resolving the center, Lotman center and periphery. I would suggest that our memorials need to evolve, need to become much more interactive, need to help, as I think your talk is really, Federico is really trying to focus on, how it is our future memorials and other institutions in general can help ameliorate the tension that leads to, in essence, this index of conspiracy theories and other truthiness that's also in the center, not just the periphery. Let's remember, everyone's in the business of spinning their own story. But yeah, so back to the question of the memorial, like, how can the memorial be like actual memory? In other words, actual memory in our brains is paradoxically a process of evolution. It's a living process, whereby memories, in order for memories to sustain themselves, they actually have to update themselves constantly in a network of relations. And that's why I think semiotics is particularly useful as a discipline, because it concedes that the sign, whether it's a monument or a memory, the sign is a network of relations, ultimately. And I think conspiracy theorists are just, they're just, as wrong as they may be in the facts, they're just indicative of kind of a desperate need for updating the connections as fast as human history is moving. And so I'm really pleased with all of your guys' presentations. And I'll just throw that out there, and you know, to summarize it all with a question for you, Federico. Do you, in your research, have you looked at, you know, say the relationship between the neuroscience of memory and how it's a living memory and evolving memory, ironically, to sustain, you know, to stabilize the memory, it has to be constantly updated to remain relevant, which is antithetical to traditional memorials, which are essentially trying to do the opposite, which is to claim that we can carve into stone some sort of permanent capital T truth, which I think a lot of us don't really believe is a thing anyway. But nevertheless, our traditional memorials would lead us to believe that. In your work, do you address that tension? And if so, yeah, what projects, are there any projects out there that you feel are endeavoring to engage that tension?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Josh, for all your comment and to have made the connection between all the presentation, and to show also, you know, a living example of the different cases, also what I was looking at. In relation to the actual relationship of the different memories that you mentioned, I touched slightly the topics in my book, in the literature review, of course, but unfortunately time and space is always limited, and I most look at how memory and identity politics take shape into space, moving the debate that is in my book to, for sure, semiotic theory of culture, especially using mainly Umberto Eco and Yuri Lotman and some narrative semiotics in order to access especially the materiality, the material dimension of monuments memorial, until more recent studies that not only review the semiotic theory methodology of this founding father, but also use them to look at the memory politics, the politics of national memory and identity, as Marek Tam quoted. So going toward a more cultural historian, cultural geographical debate. What you say, obviously, is at the moment in my research in the background, but I will take it as a suggestion to more look at it. That definitely can inform better the theoretical aspect on the constructiveness of the history, if you want, and of the memory as well, as you said.
Thank you. And we have another question from Milou, and then one question from here. Okay. Can Milou hear us?
Hello.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you, Federico, for this presentation. My question is, what do you think of the process of lighting or illuminating monuments to express official political positions?
Hi, Milo. It's nice to see you. Well, surely monuments and memorials we see from the various presentations are still an important space in the urban space. They are, you know, what Lynch called them landmarks. They are very visible. They occupy a very vast portion of the urban space. There are obviously smaller monuments, a bigger monument, but in general, when you talk about lighting, for sure, we speak about the facade, somehow the face of some monumental building or the pedestal of some statues and so on and so forth. So greater monumental architecture. There are some interesting approaches to lighting and virtual shows, digital mapping, and so on and so forth. That, for example, in my city, Bologna, was used in the unfinished facade of the cathedral of my city to show all the plans that from Middle Age to today were proposed in order to finish the facade. That's really interesting. You will also put digital sound in order to accompany, let's say, this digital mapping. There are also some more resistant practices, as we see with the digital projection of Afro-American heroes on the pedestal of the Confederate monuments in the US as a way, to reconquer somehow that space that was taken by unwanted monuments represented ideas, racist and ideals related to racism and slavery. And then there are obviously more general projects, consumption of space, let's call it, related to advertisement or just general idea of lighting the city, for example, for public holidays, in Italy, for example, for Christmas and so on and so forth, which I don't have a strong opinion against it, but doesn't really add much value to the spatial history of monumental facade, for example, as in the other cases.
Thank you very much, amigo.
Thanks to you, Milo. Thanks.
Thank you. So now we have a question from here.
Hi, thank you for the fabulous presentation. When you were mentioning about the institutional solutions, one of the solutions was the relocation. So the first question which came into my mind was, how could it help to relocate a sculpture from one city to another when, in case of its rejection nationwide, or like when it's a controversial sculpture in that case, coming from the citizens? And so did you have another imagination or explanation, or can you give an example, a concrete example like of this solution that applied in reality?
Probably should have used the word strategy. I mean, I did use it, but I don't want to give any kind of idea of positivistic idea toward the idea of solution. The solution has just been taken. It's not like the situation is resolved or anything. All of them has a different way to approach the debate, the political, ethnic, social, cultural division that a monument may or may not express, communicate in space. Conflict exists. That's why we need, semiotician, cultural geographer, ethno-semiotician, anthropologist, historians, and so on and so forth to work behind the potential solution to contested monuments and memorials. And then it becomes political, and it depends obviously on the context. A relocation can be, from the institutional point of view, as a way to not deal with the situation in space, but just to erase from the original location of the monuments, meaning that location that was designed in order to give visibility to the monument, appropriate visibility to the monuments, and to place it somewhere else where there is the opportunity to, if you want, to remove this visibility or at least give context to the unwanted monument. There are many different cases of, for example, Soviet or socialist statues that have been moved to museums. Sometimes this help in giving new context and to create a sort of detached from what the elites wanted and what the monuments originally erected. Sometimes actually giving more attention to monuments that maybe before were just in peripheral areas or were just functional, creating debates around the city. There have been also more creative ways. For example, the up till 2019, if I remember well, in Tallinn, a Soviet statue of, I don't remember, sorry, the political figure that was represented there, but was placed in front of the toilet of the, I don't remember the name precisely, but the Museum of Liberation nearby Freedom Square, right outside the town of Tallinn. So in this way, relocation is really political, no? Soviet monuments that actually guard just a toilet in the museum, and it's somehow playful to see that, and it gives actually a strong opinion toward that that statue. Sorry if the word solution sometimes was intended in my speech, was used wrongly. I don't want to give any kind of solution to remove conflicts. Conflict exists. As semiotician, we need to look at it and to study the multiple meaning and interpretation around it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now we are a bit over time, but since I am the moderator and I will take because I really want to ask something, so I will take some time to. So my question it relates to the digital solutions and to this part that. Yeah, because I'm and I wanted also to sort of tie this with Heidi's presentation, because so how feasible are these digital solutions, and also what are the implications of them? Because you know, sometimes it seems that people are very sure that only what exists online exists. And sometimes there are even these cases of like false memories, because people remember to have seen some ad, but then they cannot find it in YouTube. So they said, well, then maybe this never happened. Yeah, so what are like the risks of these digital solutions for monuments? How are they related to reshaping of memory, or of yeah, what is the role in this conflict that already exists? How does it tie with this potentially conspiracy theories with the false memories and these kind of things? So yeah, what do you think? And I mean, if the other presenters want to say a little bit, we can take some 10 minutes or something. And yeah, that's it.
Maybe Heidi, we want to go first on what Israel was saying, or?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I do think that the matter of memory in relation to online life is very interesting. Maybe I will take that into my PhD.
Great. Well, Israel, if I get it well, like, as you might know, like part of my job, let's say, is dealing with marketing in a ECT Italian company, which is partner of Google Cloud. So we deal with the Google Cloud technologies and like machine learning and so on and so forth. As you know, there is there are some technology which are treated in the public as well in business debate as some hype. Now, for example, at least in Italy, we're still in the hype of machine learning. So now everybody wants to do a bit of machine learning and embed it in the business processes and so on and so forth. So all our aspects of the life first and business later, actually, have been digitalized. Many different areas in the past 15 years. I'm part of the generation which I started, to play video games. Of course, I was born in 1988, so of course I cannot define myself. I can define myself, if you want, a digital native, but not a web 3.0. I don't know which number 0.0 we are, but in any case, native. So all the aspect of our life has been highly digitalized. And there is, of course, some critics on that, of course, to the consumption, exploitation of these digital technologies, of the use, of this misuse of this technology, and so on and so forth. But it's something that we cannot really just say that there is no, it's a practice that is affecting us in many different aspects. Of course, there are unfortunately some critics and some form of resistance to that. When it comes to monuments and memorials, as I tried to say in my presentation, there is a lot of projects of how to digitally preserve the cultural heritage in general, monument and memorial in specific. There is less example and, of course, less research in how the digital embed in memorials, physical one, and memorial practices too. Of course, social media, we do memorialized and so on and so forth, but there is less way to create projects around, create actual digital memorial and actual digital native memorial practice. And this, as I said, probably because this is considered quite bureaucratic, not social, pretty institutional, and pretty delicate matter. Probably because especially physical memorial has a strong material dimension, which still we cannot see, how can they become virtual, or can they be embedded with digital solutions, and so on and so forth. So how visible are these digital solutions? Not much yet, I would say. This doesn't answer, totally your question, where you were already, going further, and I guess I will take your comment as suggestion now to also take some direction and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to, think with you on this. While life is digitalized first, business is digitalized later, monuments and memorial, we are still in the transition, and it's we need more research to see how this digital solution can be somehow useful and create new digital practices in memorializing and also in creating the national memory and identity politics.
Any other comments from the room? Maybe just over here. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, we have one more comment.
Hello. Just one more comment to what you just said, because I just wanted to ask a very similar question about you just mentioned the national identity created by the memorials and similar projects serving similar functions online in the digital space. But what about the possibility of creating worldwide, or at least like more globalized identities through the digital space, which has certain limitations, but it also has this possibilities that open to widen the audience?
This is the main objective of many different European projects of, digitalizing cultural heritage or monuments and memorial in specific, in order to grant access to a larger community. The digital give access to grant the community to information and so on and so forth. And this is also to the access, for example, to digitalize cultural heritage sites, but also to as we see, for example, in COVID-19, during COVID-19 lockdowns and so on and so forth, digital memorial practices to commemorate our dead and so on and so forth. This is obviously interesting and enhance participation. designing technology with the human in mind and not for commercial exploitation and so on and so forth, obviously help to create valuable social and useful digital memorial platforms rather than quite, let's say, bureaucratic tools that exist but maybe are not really used today. So your suggestion is very, very important, and we need to consider always the global aspect that digital somehow naturally include.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
More comment from Romeo.
Oh,
Last comment.
Hi, Federico. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to go back to Pauline's comment to Victoria's presentation because I really appreciated that. I think it's something important to think about. As she mentioned, the French monarchy and the statues of French kings. And this is something that nobody is disturbed by. But you showed us these pictures of people taking stupid photographs, like selfies, in the context of the Holocaust memorials. And this is something that we are deeply disturbed by. But I want to say about a monument that it's outdated or it is controversial, it's a very temporary thing. And it can only be outdated or controversial for some period of time. And for example, if I think about Rome, of course, everyone in Rome goes to the Colosseum and people do take stupid selfies, pictures, and smiling in the context of this monument where people used to die, killing each other while other people were watching them. So, you know, it's something relative. And also, my favorite monument in Rome is the Colosso Quadrato, which people look at very differently, and no one actually appreciates that. But it's also a very beautiful building. But we have associations very recent to this building, so no one goes there taking selfies, smiling, etc. So I just wanted to bring this up. If you have some comments.
Well, that's exactly the point. Thank you very much for this comment. Like, first of all, everything, as you said, can be controversial. Not only, you know, those more urgent debates that we see in the news, but every kind of built forms, especially monuments and memorials, which mainly represent, you know, characters from the past, action, identities, and so on and so forth, can be contested. Surely, monuments from ancient time, which were once places of death and now are somehow visited joyfully in their functional aspect, in the tourist aspect, in their architectural aspect by millions of tourists, for example, the Colosseum and many others in Rome. Everything can become controversial also through the fortunately change in culture, in the opinion and attitudes we have toward the past, and so on and so forth. Even a small statue that was built for more general consumption space, representing more general narratives. For example, since there are many people from Tartu here, you know, the kissing students in the main square of Tartu can become controversial. There's only heterosexual love there represented. So what about all the other minorities and so on and so forth? And the way they kiss, they touch each other can become controversial. So everything can become controversial. Studying all these kind of changes through the history, and of course, you know, as you said, the fastness through which those concepts changed also in our digital era definitely is much faster, and there's more people that can express their own opinions through digital songs and so on and so forth, and this is good. I don't think there will be a global, universal digital solution to update the meanings of the actual built forms around, we need to try to design a human-centered digital solution to make this conflict become a learning experience from whole, if I can, you know. Also because, unfortunately, you know, erasing and changing built forms continuously is basically impractical. So my research from now on will focus on, you know, digital solution for contested architecture that is actually, you know, very difficult for economical terms and so on and so forth to remove. No? Let's think about many, like in Italy, there are many fascist buildings that has become other things, no, like the place of the post office or and so on and so forth, and people don't really look at them as fascist, but they are still there, no, and this is impossible to remove as it's a huge part of the city and it's very expensive to do that, and mainly the municipality doesn't have money to do. So there are many cases of monuments, memorials, cultural heritage, monumental architecture that cannot be simply removed from day to night. What to do? If we design this human-centered solution, probably we can create a space and a time where communities, possibly globally, can engage with that and turn the place of death, totalitarianism into a learning experience for all. So that's what I think is an opinion. It's not nothing scientific here.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to everybody who came, and to everybody in Zoom. I think some people have already left, but in any case, thanks a lot. And yeah, I will just remind you that we will have our third session in 2 weeks from now, and we will have Olga Lavrenova, Daria Arhipova, and Titran. So you should come, because it will be another wonderful session. And thank you to Federico, Heidi, and Victoria, because it was really, really good. And yeah, thanks again. We will upload soon our recordings, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks to everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Where's Sherlock Holmes?